Gwe, Nin Deloisi Kathleen, Och Deliawi Montagan, Och Witabexi Ebiguit.
Och Nin Deloisi Sarah, Och Deliawi, Cardigan, Och Witabexi Abaguit. Today we will be presenting Mi'kmaq men and women expectations. Our content will consist of 8 discussion points based on the information that we have gathered and learned ourselves.
Oral history and archaeological evidence place the Mi'kmaq in Mi'kma'ki for more than Bidun Glahani Bigadun, or 10,000 years. The Mi'kmaq nation is traditionally divided into Elwiganek, or 7 geographical districts, each with its own leadership that reports to the Grand Council.
Around Bidun Glahun, 1,000 years ago, as Europeans settled, they brought with them their foreign ideas like gender, being created by the Holy Spirit as either an Ebit, woman, or a Jinnum, man, is of minor importance in the Mi'kmaq worldview.
There is no concern with the concept of gender, but rather the concepts of honoring their ordinary efforts as the roles we will delve into, like Ngich, mother, Nadugulit, hunter, gatherer, Nagedgunit, godparent or grandfather. As for economic efforts, the Wudon, village, or band groups were the economic unit, not nuclear families. Rather than gendered superiority, roles were separated by function. Women often managed the domestic sphere, gathered Majipchue, food, and held political decision-making power. At the same time, men protected and hunted, with both respected equally. The Mi'kmaq cultures put a lot of emphasis on Maui Lugu Dim, working together.
Expectations of Mi'kmaq women. Females in the Mi'kmaq community are a powerful force, well recognized among their people. They are a strong force for transmitting the values, culture, and language of the people since they are the main agents of the culture. In every Mi'kmaq unit, there is a strong female presence. An intriguing point is how the power of the women and the cycles of her body are so strong that they could affect the spirits of the male, so as to diminish his ability to hunt or fish. For example, certain customs must be followed just in case, like they must not ever step over a male's legs, simgwadi, his fishing pole, his bow and arrows, his gun, or anything else associated with hunting and fishing. Furthermore, Mi'kmaq women are the keepers of the unknown. They have the ability to see the ordinary with amazement and to create the future. Each Mi'kmaq woman is the primary path that forces man beyond knowing to the unknowable future. They have control over the reproductive decisions and were seen as the owners of the home. Mi'kmaq communities were known to be of the matrilineal structure, meaning descendant, inheritance, or succession through the female line, mother to daughter. In addition to hunting and fishing, the Mi'kmaq engaged in gathering a variety of wild plants, berries, and nuts. These activities were primarily carried out by women and children, who collected edible plants such as fiddleheads and wild abscessus, onions, and various berries.
Next, we'll discuss expectations of Mi'kmaq men. Men were primarily responsible for hunting, fishing, and protecting the clan. They provided the necessary resources for the survival of the family. Hunting and fishing were essential parts of Mi'kmaq subsistence practices. The Mi'kmaq were skilled hunters, employing methods such as trapping, snaring, and the use of bows and arrows. With fishing, you could find them using techniques like netting, spearing, and the use of weirs, which are manufactured barriers constructed across rivers to control Cebu river flow.
Expectations in family and community life. In the Mi'kmaq culture, there is an immense respect for the unborn. In fact, in the Mi'kmaq language, there is no word for fetuses or embryos. From the time of conception, a baby is called a mijwajij, a baby. A mother's behavior and attitude are important elements during the growth of that child, so certain precautions are taken and certain behaviors are expected of the Ngich, mother. In a reserve or a village, Mi'kmaq children are visible everywhere. Each adult has the obligation of keeping an eye on children and warning them of potential danger. That danger may be in a form of approaching a stranger, thin ice, an oncoming car, or oasis, an animal. It is one's duty to make an effort to protect all children. As our Nujigi Namawet teacher who teaches had mentioned in class, it is also appropriate to scold or lecture children other than your own when you see them doing something wrong.
Next is cultural and spiritual life. Historically, individuals who did not fit into male or female binary roles were recognized and honored, also known as two-spirit identity. Mi'kmaq language and oral traditions contain evidence of varied gender identities, sometimes referred to as warriors of Gazalzudi, love, though colonization has impacted the modern understanding of these roles.
Governance and leadership. From the era of European contact to present day, Sakama chiefs have played a vital role in keeping and reshaping relations with colonial powers over matters concerning trade, war, treaties, and modern politics. For example, during the fur trade, Europeans relied on the extensive knowledge and hospitality of the indigenous people and leaders to provide them with the necessities to survive the harshness of their new environment. While men historically held positions of leadership in many indigenous nations, women also had a governing power in certain societies. For the most part, however, colonization eroded positions of female leadership, as the Europeans often wouldn't recognize a female leader. The Indian Act further prohibited the election of the Sakamawisk female chiefs. Up until 1951, only men could vote in band elections. Since the abolishment of this aspect of the Indian Act, the number of Sakamawisk in Canada has doubled in the last Dabawiski Gibunet 20 years. In 2016, nearly a fifth of the First Nations in Canada were led by women.
Going along with governance are elders. Mi'kmaq society holds this value with the highest esteem and considers it most important of all. Elders not only hold the knowledge of our ancestors, but they also have the language through which the knowledge must be passed on to the youth. Their years of searching, listening, experiencing, and understanding all that is bodily, emotional, and spiritually possible grant them the wisdom and strength needed by our youth to become good Mi'kmaq. Elders are the keepers of the sacred lessons of tribal and global harmony for all living things within the environment. The older one gets, the wiser one becomes, and the more respect one accumulates. When a person receives the title of an elder, he is called Ami, our grandmother, or Amide, our grandfather. In this respected position, elders are the teachers of our children in everyday life as well as in spiritual life. They are the orators whose knowledge about Mi'kmaq life extends from our present and future.
Impacts of colonization. Colonization had a profound and lasting impact on many Mi'kmaq communities, particularly through loss of land, cultural identity, and self-determination. As European settlement expanded, Mi'kmaq people were instinctively displaced from their traditional territories, which impacted and limited their access to essential hunting, fishing, and space for traditional resources. At the same time, they also faced the policies of forced assimilation, which required them to give up their cultural identity, language, and traditional practices. This led to the beginning of the residential schools such as the Shubenacadie Indian Residential School, which was located in Nova Scotia and began operation from 1929 to 1967. These institutions began removing Indigenous children from their families and homes and prohibiting any use of Mi'kmaq language, interfering with the transmission of cultural knowledge across generations. Even though treaties were eventually made and implemented, Mi'kmaq people still fought for their rights, respect, and for all land to be returned. In the present day, we need to acknowledge that this continues to be an ongoing problem, continuing to affect the daily lives of Indigenous people. For example, Mi'kmaq communities continue to face challenges regarding land rights, where they must go through lengthy legal processes to have the agreements respected and territory recognized. So the continuous effects of past systems like residential schools are still very present and strong, as many families and communities face intergenerational impacts on mental health, identity, and cultural connection.
Colonization affected the men and women in Mi'kmaq households in distinct but interconnected ways, largely by disrupting traditional roles, family structures, and cultural responsibilities. Mi'kmaq women traditionally held a very important role in not only decision-making, but caregiving and the transmission of cultural knowledge within both the household and broader community. However, these roles were significantly weakened when male dominant systems were forced on them, taking away much of their power in decision-making roles. Due to the decrease in freedom and rights, measures were put in place. Women then faced a major challenge when land was displaced, which in turn limited their access and ability to gather food and manage resources. Additionally, the residential schools had another profound effect as children were taken from their families, preventing women from fulfilling their roles as caregivers and from passing down cultural traditions and teachings. For men, Colonization disrupted traditional roles such as hunting, fishing, and protecting communities by, again, limiting access to land and resources. This quote from Patty Doyle Bedwell speaks volumes about the effects of colonialism on Mi'kmaq women. Mi'kmaq women in our communities had very powerful positions. There was no question about it. You can still see that today. I am not talking about power over others. I am talking about power and strength and courage. It is putting yourself out there. It is doing what you need to keep the nation going. Since before contact and through all the assimilation policies in the Indian Act and all the residential schools, Mi'kmaq women have always had this vision of keeping our nation alive. We are always thinking about the future generations of our people.
Expectations today. Giskuk, today, there is a great need for women in leadership and women serving organizations. The Nova Scotia Native Women's Association is an organization that does just that. The Nova Scotia Native Women's Organization was formed in 1972 and in 1977 was officially incorporated as a not-for-profit association under the Societies Act of Nova Scotia. The NSNWA is mandated to help empower Indigenous women by being involved in developing and changing legislation that affects them by involving them in the development of the delivery programs promoting equal opportunity for Mi'kmaq women and their families. NSNWA is an inclusive provincial organization speaking with a unified voice for Mi'kmaq and Indigenous women and Two-Spirit people both on and off reserve. NSNWA promotes equality and equal opportunities for Mi'kmaq and Indigenous women and educates women on their rights and the issues affecting them.
Our last point includes a reflective summary and conclusion. Through conducting our research, we gained an appreciative understanding of the expectations of Mi'kmaq men, women, and families. It is an immensely enlivening perspective of togetherness and interconnectedness, how all roles complement and work together rather than the hierarchical roles we are used to as a society today. It was refreshing to learn how no one is inferior to anyone, just different expectations. Bachlegip, we were in awe of how their society is matrilineal in nature. As two young female university students, we see the effects of the patriarchy every day and have sadly become accustomed to sexist assumptions that people may make based on our gender. We felt frustrated at the normalization of sexism and curious about alternative systems. Reflection on how gender imbalance today is not traditional but colonial is something we should all hold space for.
Additionally, the imposition of colonial systems, particularly through systems such as the Indian Act and institutions like the Canadian residential school system, introduced patriarchal structures that interfered with these relationships and diminished the roles and authority of women. Also, recognizing that gender inequality within Indigenous communities is not traditional, but rather an impact from colonization, questions common beliefs in society, and shows the everlasting effect that the colonial decisions have left on these communities. Furthermore, our research has also encouraged us to think more critically about how these historical impacts continue to shape present-day realities. These ongoing effects of colonization can be seen not only in legal and political struggles, but also in social issues such as identity, intergenerational trauma, and the continued need for cultural rebuilding. Throughout our presentation, these are the Mi'kmaq words that we have used.
Walalaya.